How good can the Chicago Bulls be this season? Let's get into this. Quickly before we get the video started, if you guys enjoy this video and want to see more NBA content just like this one, hit that subscribe button and that post notification bell. Anyways, back to the video. Over the past few seasons, the Chicago Bulls have been known as one of the bottom feeders of the NBA. They're always picking high in the draft. In terms of the standings, they're always in the lower tier of the standings, basically never making the NBA playoffs, and if they were even close to it, it would be the 9th or 10th seed. Nothing really closer than that. And basically the Bulls have been rebuilding for some time now. But over the past season or two, it finally seems like the Bulls are headed in the right direction. And they brought in some very talented players. You look at a guy like Lonzo Ball, who they just brought in this offseason. In my opinion, I think he's pretty underrated, and some people love him and some people don't like him, but overall I think he's a very talented young player for this Bulls team and a fantastic pickup for them. You talk about a guy like Demar Derozan, who they also just recently brought in during this offseason. I think he's definitely a great scorer. I don't necessarily know how well he fits with this Bulls roster. We'll see what happens with him and the rest of the roster going forward, but overall as just a player, I think Derozan is clearly a very talented scorer in this league. Then of course you look at a guy like Zach LaVine, who they brought in a few seasons back. Ever since he's gotten to the Bulls, he's just been fantastic. His three-point shooting ability, of course his insane athleticism, his finishes around the basket, his passing ability has been a little bit better than advertised. Overall, LaVine has really worked himself into a very good role and potentially at the very least an all-star level player. Maybe even a little bit better than that going forward. Then you also talk about another guy they brought in this last season, Nikola Vucevic. I think he's also a very talented center, and although he didn't necessarily fit in that well last season with the Bulls, I think it was more so of a thing that he was just brought in too late, and once you add a player, especially to the magnitude of the player Vucevic is, it's always hard to integrate them within your team, and I think that's more so what we saw this previous season with Vucevic and the Chicago Bulls. It was more so they didn't have their chemistry right yet, and now that they have a full offseason and a full season going together, I think Vucevic is going to fit in with this Bulls team a lot better than he did last season for that half year he was there. But you look at other guys in the roster, you look at a guy like Kobe White, who they drafted a few seasons back. I think he's also going to be a very good player in this league. He's a fantastic scorer in general, amazing shooter, and with all the talent they have, he's probably going to be coming off the bench at this point, and having a guy like Kobe White coming off the bench, just an instant bucket coming off the bench, is just a fantastic thing to have on your roster. And overall, when you just look up and down the Chicago Bulls roster, they're just a very exciting team. And I think it's very clear compared to last season, the Chicago Bulls team and roster is a lot more talented. But now there's a few questions that do come up when you bring all these new players in. The first thing is, how do all these players actually mesh together? And the next question would be, how good could the Chicago Bulls team actually be this season? So starting off with the first question in terms of how these players would mesh together, let's start first with looking at the starting lineup. So I don't know if this is going to be the official starting lineup, but in my opinion, it's probably going to look somewhat similar to this. So at your point guard, you're going to have Lonzo Ball. At your shooting guard, you're going to have Zach LaVine. Small forward is probably going to be DeMar DeRozan. Power forward is either going to be Patrick Williams or Derrick Jones, probably Patrick Williams. And at your center, you're going to have Nikola Vucevic, in my opinion. That's what I think the starting lineup should be. So the first thing that I wanted to say about the starting lineup is I think they're definitely going to be a very fast-paced offense. When you look at the guys they have Lonzo, DeMar, and Zach LaVine, and all three of these guys can easily get the ball off the rebound on the defensive side of the ball and quickly push the pace up to the offensive side, where either they can hit a pull-up three-point jump shot, maybe drive all the way to the basket for a wide-open dunk or layup for themselves, or maybe they can pass to find one of their teammates for a wide-open dunk or layup. All three of these guys are obviously super quick and obviously super athletic to easily get the rebound and take it to the other side of the court and quickly just score easily. So that's definitely going to put a ton of pressure on whatever team is defending these guys. But in terms of how they're actually going to play in the half court, I think that's a little more tricky. So in the past few seasons for the Chicago Bulls, how their offense was really run is Zach LaVine would have the ball in his hands most of the time, and either he would run the pick and roll with whatever center they have and maybe find his teammates from time to time, but mostly what Zach LaVine would do on the offensive side of the ball was just get buckets at will. He was a really good three-point shooter for the Bulls. He was creating for himself from that three-point land, either with a pull-up jump shot, maybe a crossover into a three-point jump shot, maybe a little bit of a sidestep or a step back. He was very prolific with that three-point jump shot, but another thing that LaVine was doing is he was just cooking his defenders and getting all the way way to the basket and using his crazy athleticism to either dunk over them or finish around them with crafty layups. He even had a little bit of a mid-range jump shot within his game, post turnaround fadeaway. He was just a complete package in terms of his scoring ability. And basically that's how their offense was run, just completely playing through Zach LaVine. But now that they added a few more players, how is it going to work between Lonzo Ball and Zach LaVine and also Demar Derozan? Who's going to handle the ball most of the time? Now I think if Zach LaVine still handles the ball most of the time, I think it can work in terms of him and Lonzo, because Lonzo over the past few seasons has really improved his 3-point jump shooting ability in particular, and he's definitely more than capable of being a spot up 3-point shooter now. So if Zach LaVine has the ball in his hands most of the time, he could still easily kick to Lonzo for a wide open corner 3-point shot, and Lonzo is going to hit more often than he's not. Or maybe in the past that was a little bit of an issue for him, or more than a little bit of an issue. But the question to me is, what about DeMar DeRozan? So DeRozan, when he has the ball in his hands, is fantastic, but when DeMar doesn't have the ball in his hands, he's not necessarily known as a 3-point shooter. And I don't necessarily know if DeMar DeRozan could just spot up from that corner 3-point shot and just hit shots like that. I don't think that's how he works. How he really works is he obviously is very efficient in the mid-range game. He has a fantastic post turnaround fadeaway. He can get all the way to the basket. So that's going to be a little bit of an interesting dynamic between the three players. And also, by the way, I think if Lonzo Ball has a ball in his hands a lot of the time, Zach LaVine can also be pretty effective with it as well, because Zach LaVine has shown the ability to be able to catch and shoot from the 3-point range as well. So it's certainly going to be interesting. If I had to guess, I would probably say that DeMar would probably have the ball in his hands a decent amount of the time, because not only is he a very good scorer in this league, but over the past season, maybe 2 seasons in San Antonio, DeMar has actually shown a pretty good ability to pass the ball around, and he was averaging a career high in assists. So maybe what the Bulls can do is have the ball in DeMar's hands most of the time, and either DeMar could score for himself, run the pick and roll and find Vucevic either cutting or popping, or maybe he can find one of his corner 3-point shooters or whatever, or he can just get all the way to the basket and just finish over whoever's there. And then a guy like Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball and Patrick Williams and all these other guys, and Vucevic as well, all have the ability to hit that catch and shoot 3-point jump shot, and maybe they can be a pretty effective offense like that. And I think once you take out your starters, you leave in either Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan, one of those two guys, and you just let one of those guys completely cook with the bench. And then it would either be DeRozan or LaVine off the bench. Of course, you have Kobe White as well, Derrick Jones Jr., Alex Caruso. You have some talent coming off the bench as well. But now moving on to the next question is, how good could this Bulls team actually be this season? So clearly from last season to this season, the expectations are way higher. A lot of people's expectations for this Bulls team is basically just to make the playoffs, but how good do I expect them to be able to get? So of course I think this Bulls team better make the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, I think it would definitely be a failure for the amount of talent they have on this roster, but of course anything could happen. The chemistry could just be completely terrible and cause them to maybe be the 9th or 10th seed and just miss the playoffs. We'll see what happens going forward, but in terms of my personal expectations for this Bulls team, I think they definitely have the chance and potential to be at the very least a 7th, maybe 6th seed, maybe even a 5th seed, and clearly I'm kind of lowballing them a little bit. They can obviously even be a little bit better than that. I think they can basically be any seed up to the 4th seed. Anything above that I think would be pretty crazy and a pretty crazy improvement and overachievement. Anything lower than the 8th seed I think would be a disappointment for them. But if I had to guess to pick the seed I think the Bulls are going to be this season, I would probably have to say the 6th seed. But I'm just very excited to see not only what this Bulls team can do this season, but also going forward. Of course, as I mentioned before in the video, this Bulls roster has a ton of young talent, but also a ton of guys under contract for a decent amount of time. And I'm very excited to see what Kobe White can do going forward. I think right now he's probably going to be that 6-man role where he's coming off the bench and it's just going to be a scoring punch, but I'm excited to see going forward, is he going to be that kind of player, like that Lou Williams kind of player going forward? Is that going to be his career, or could he potentially get a little bit better than that and maybe have his starting role either on this Bulls team in a few years from now, or maybe if the Bulls don't have enough room on their organization and roster, maybe he moves on to another team and becomes a star for another team. I'm excited to see what he can do, but of course when you talk about DeMar, we all know what he is. Zach LaVine, we all know what he is. Vucevic, we all know what he is. But speaking of a guy like Lonzo Ball, I think at this point basically we know what Lonzo Ball is, just a fantastic defender, could catch and shoot from that 3-point range, and on the offensive side of the ball, it's just a fantastic passer and playmaker as well. But I'm excited excited to see his progression because it appears that each and every season he's getting better at some aspect of his game. And one criticism of Lonzo Ball's game is his inability to create his own shot. So down the line, maybe in a few years from now, I'm excited to see if Lonzo could eventually add that within his game, and if he's now able to create his own shot along with hit that catch and shoot 3-point jump shot, be a fantastic defender, and of course, as we all know, be fantastic in terms of his passing and playmaking ability. I think Lonzo Ball could certainly be a fantastic player in this NBA. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. How do you think the Chicago Bulls are going to be this season? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that post notification bell. It really helps me out a lot. Until the next time, peace out guys.